on Planet X and various other things. So, okay, Dr. Rand, we are back.
Okay.
All right.
Let's kind of pick up the story where we look out across and see this huge rock wall out overlooking the field where the ship would land. They were here trying to map the electrical grid and the power structure and the potential for disaster along the Mississippi Valley. But on their way here, they were struck by this type of electronic laser weaponry that the Russians were testing. By the way, they had lasers back in the 30s. This is not new technology to them.
Okay.
They were working with laser weapons. They actually, did you know, a little deviation here, did you know that Hitler was working on his own UFO program, that they had captured several themselves?
I have heard about it, but I didn't know a whole lot about it.
They had a whole huge top secret UFO base way up in the Bering Straits. It's another story. It's a brilliant story. It was called Pendamundi, and it was a top secret, and they were testing UFOs there. That'll be another night. We'll do that one another night.
Okay.
So what was about to happen was that this ship had to land, because when this laser weapon struck the ship, it disrupted a very sensitive piece of navigation, a device that navigated and also interpreted the atmospheres of each of the planets or the moons or whatever they were visiting. Very sophisticated piece of equipment. It was thrown out of serious alignment because of the electromagnetic effects of this weapon. And so they had to land to recalibrate at the frequency points. There are grid systems that cover the planet. They're called ley lines. And they crisscross the planet like a very intricate web of lines. Like they're almost little grid systems. And if you know where to locate them, and you're able to tap into their immediate proximity, either by drilling or by seismic interference of some sort, what you do is you empower yourself, because this energy is always outflowing. It doesn't take from you, it gives to you, you see? It's a constant source of energy. All you have to do is learn how to tap into it. And that's how many, if not most, of UFOs traverse our atmospheres. They appear to float, they appear to zigzag. It's because they've learned how to navigate these electromagnetic fields that permeate the Earth. It's like a giant grid system. Okay, so they had to land, so they had to create a physical landing zone, because they're a physical entity. They're a craft. They were they called them nuts and bolts. Okay, so they did. My being there further complicated their game plan severely, because it just so happened that my boat that was sinking was drifting across the lake toward their intended destination point, which had been created hours before my boat even got near where it landed. And so what they were doing was, their radiation patterns and their gravitational force devices probably would have cooked me or boiled me right in the boat, just passing over me, because these crafts give off radiation fields.
Oh, sure, yeah.
All right, and that's why you can't touch them. You're not supposed to touch them physically. Mm-hmm. It's like the kid who sticks out his tongue in a frozen light pole. What happens?
He sticks to it.
He sticks to it. Is right. All right, so it landed. It went about its business of recalibrating. It took about 4 hours for them to repair it, and they were perfectly safe, because they put a larger form of a K-Bach completely over the landed ship, and I have a artistic rendering of that someday I'll put in a book. It looked like a crystal pyramid, and it was huge. It was several hundred feet high. It could have been like a miniature, King Khufu, a great pyramid in Egypt. It just towered over the ship, and it looked to be like plexiglass. All right, how did they get there? All right. What I experienced was being brought aboard the ship at my own free will. I was not abducted, and I was not probed and searched and poked or any of those things. That's what everybody asks me. Oh my God, what did they do to you? They didn't do anything to me except speak to me and feed me, and I was able to clean up. Believe it or not, they have showers. Well, it's kind of like a shower. It's kind of a misty electronic thing. And they had fresh clothes for me. Elon and I were basically like twins in body, because back then I was really, really, really thin. At age 11, I don't know, I might have weighed 115, 118 pounds maybe, I don't know. But Elon was very similar to me, not only stature, he was slightly taller than me, and I was tall for my age. He was 11 and a half years old. I was 11. But he was like 30 years smarter. You see?
Yes, sir.
It wasn't, we were both the same age, but his intelligence and his maturity was like at age 30 for me. Different cultures, that's all. It doesn't mean that I'm slow or I didn't make it. It just means he's ahead of me. That's how they're structured. That's how their genetics. That's how their humanoid systems work. Okay. And anyway, what they look like? Well, kind of like Japanese Orientals. Very, very, very similar. Slight of body. Very, very interesting. Their uniforms were all the same, except for little bars, and it reminded me of a barcode. You know, like when you buy something, you flash the barcode?
Yes.
They had like little barcode things. I mean, that's the best I can do. And they were all different. No two were alike. And I think that was their identification, that was their badges, that was their clearance things. And I think all they had to do was lean toward this laser like, ding, and he looks at it and he goes, okay, so you're Amy Doolittle and you're supposed to be a cook down on the fourth deck. Okay, you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
But their facial features were very, very similar. You could tell a male from a female, no problem, but it was hard to tell age. I couldn't distinguish age. They all kind of looked the same age to me, except the young ones. The young ones were more distinctive, and there were a couple of, I think they were like cadets. The best I can do, okay? Because I only spoke to no more than about 4 or 5 of them. What happened was that they sent this device out and they rescued me and brought me to the shore. And then once I climbed up the sand dune, I was directed to go to across the far end of the field, and that there would be a little cave that had been prepared for me. He called it a shelter. Actually, what it was a pretty crude but very sophisticated cave. They dug out this shelf, just like a huge shelf, and it was like not quite 6 feet long, but it was about 3 foot deep, and it was kind of curved, and then the top of it was just like a cliff. I mean, it had a roof to it, maybe 5 feet from the surface, big enough for me to climb into with my boat cushions and lay out. And strangely enough, this is weird, Michael.
Yeah.
When I got in it, it was nice and warm and comfy. And when I got out of it, I could feel the night. How about that? And it was partially illuminated. Now, I asked him later on, I said, what was that little shelter thing you talk about? He said, well, he says, I've seen a couple of your westerns, and he says, I thought it would be a nice touch to give you something that felt like home on the range. Do you know how intelligent that statement was? How contrived it was? And so he created this beautiful little hollow for me to go into that gave me warmth and shelter and safety, because the ship landed right out in front of me about 30 minutes later, you see.
Mm-hmm.
I witnessed the entire landing of the craft. It came in low. It was just like a Spielberg movie. So Stephen, if you're listening, the rights are available, okay? How's that? And I'm not being too bold or rash, am I?
No.
All right. I'm serious. The rights are available. So this cave sits about 4.5 feet up from the bottom of what was this loose rocky terrain that led out to this field of grass. By the way, the field of grass never stopped waving all through this time that I was there. It was like it was pre-programmed to wave. Even when the ship was landed, it kept waving. It was like a program. What I thought was, it was like a computer program that stuck, you know. First you have the waving grass, and then you have something else. So that's how I perceived it. I thought it was strange, and I asked him about it. I said, why is it that once the ship landed and everything, that, you know, when the ship landed, the grass should have been blown all over the place? He said, well, he said, it's not really grass. He said, it's the illusion of grass. He says, but it does have a physical element to it, and you can see it.
Like the holodeck on
yes.
Star Trek, yes.
Yes, because when I walked through that field of holographic grass, not only did I got wet, I got a couple of small cuts on my hands from the grass. It was tall grass, but it was also like wheat. From my memory of being in the combine when I was a kid on that farm, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized, oh yeah, this is a heck of a lot more complicated than I ever thought it would be. And then imagine my surprise years later when I see all this stuff materialize in Star Trek. Do you know how gratified I was that I wasn't, and that I hadn't imagined all this stuff? What a sigh of relief it was, right?
Uh-huh.
By the way, a quick aside to that, I was close friends with Gene Roddenberry. I'll tell you more about that maybe in the later part of the segment. So I even got to meet him and be friends with him and everything. Okay, back to the story. So the thing lands, and the grass was weird. What it was a computer-generated program. But somebody forgot to end it or to stop its movement, whatever. The ship lands, and he starts talking to me again. And even though I knew exactly who he was, I still got startled. And I remember pushing myself back. When he first came on, it was loud in my ears. It was like, oh, my God. And I knew it was him. I'm looking down at the ship. It had to be him. So he says, how was our landing? And the only word that I had in my mind was terrifying. And he laughed. He thought that was so funny. So I said to him, I said, why are you laughing? I said, I'm sitting here shaking. He said, he says, we got a lot more surprises than that. And then I suddenly realized, Michael, I'm dealing with a superior intelligence that is not only witty and smart, but he's cunning and he's very, very hip. You follow me?
Yes, I do.
Which made me feel very, very good. Now, isn't that a positive end to that point? It made me feel extremely good because this did not sound like the voice or the pattern or the mind of some bad creature from outer space that was going to do me harm, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So I basically said to him, I said, well, here I am, and there you are. I said, now what? And he says, very clearly, he's just like talking to you, Michael, just like I'm talking to you right now. He says, well, he said, my father would like you to come aboard and be our guest. And I immediately hesitated because do you remember seeing the original black and white version of the original Thing?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do.
You remember that scene when they were trying to open the freezer door and it reaches out and it grabs one of the scientists?
Yeah.
That's what flashed through my mind when he said, my father would like to invite you to dinner. Now, wasn't that sick for an 11-year-old? I was writing that segment for my book, and I couldn't help. When I read it, I thought to myself how absurd everything was, but it all happened just that way, so I wrote about it, right? So he picks that up, right? Because he reads my mind. There's nothing that I could think about that he wasn't already perceiving and understanding, okay? So he stops. Of course, I don't see him now. I'm empathizing all this from his voice to me. He stops in his tracks a little bit. And so he says, "No, come on." He says, "Not me, not us." And I immediately understood what he meant. He was overpowered by the stupidity of my thought. So he said, "No, not me, not us." Meaning he wasn't like them, you see?
Uh-huh.
So we talked about the process of coming aboard. All this, by the way, all this is taking over a space of about maybe 3.5 to 4 minutes. Everything that I'm saying, all the conversations back and forth. So what happened was, it was agreed upon that he would beam out of, what we call beam out, he would come out of the ship, out onto the land out in front of where I was, and he would escort me to their form of elevator transport, just like on Star Trek. One moment you're there, and one moment you're gone, and then there you are again, okay? That's exactly how he arrived. There was a zone, there was a point, there was an area, and he knew exactly where it was. Well, he said, "Okay." He said, I'm ready." He said, "I've been waiting for this all afternoon." Now, isn't that a cute little thing to say to a terrified kid? You know, he says he's been waiting all afternoon to come out to bring me up to the ship. But I misinterpreted that, you see?
So what was their purpose for all this? What did
their purpose was that they were going to have a rendezvous with me one way or the other, because they lured my father to this area for the fishing trip by sending him through a mail order. He wanted to go to another place in Manitoba. This place was not the place he chose. And so suddenly, instead of getting the place that he chose, he got the packet to go to this particular resort where we went in by seaplane, which he didn't order and he didn't ask about. So when it came, he called them and they talked him into it. Now, the people that ran it weren't part of this, do you follow me? It's just that whatever element was able to force or direct the direction of his request sent the information that they wanted him to receive. They meaning the fourth racers. I found all this out later. So there we are, up in Canada, under very strange circumstances, and all this is happening to me. So what they had planned on doing was very simple. At some point, with all that wilderness out there, they would pick the time to communicate with me in physical form, because it was time for me to receive my next point of initiation as a reality engineer, to get the chip. You see?
Mm-hmm.
The communication device. Just like in Star Trek. Imagine my surprise when I heard them talk about all that stuff. So they would have rendezvoused with me one way or another, but instead this time I forced their hand. You see how being a naughty boy can get me in trouble and almost got me killed out there? So by making that conscious choice to disobey my father and take the boat, if I hadn't done it, I may not have rendezvoused in the way that we should have. But what I did was I forced the issue. So while I'm on the ship, I was given a complete tour of it. Well, first of all, I met his. Let me go back to when he landed, because meeting them for the first time and being brought aboard the ship was quite illuminating. He says, "I'm coming." He says, "Stay inside the hollow." He says, "Don't come out." And he said, "When you first see me," he said, "whatever you do," he says, "don't run toward me or anything." He said, "because there's a field be around me." And he said, "I have to let the field dissipate." You see, he was in a charged field of some sort. So sure enough, seconds later, it was like a blue beam of light, a beautiful blue beam of light, and at the bottom of it, he just kind of just materialized like out of a fog. And there he was. And I thought to myself, wow, this is a great computer game, but this guy's real. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe 4, 5, 6, 8 seconds goes by, and he motions me to come out. Now, all he had to do in my mind was say, "Come on out." But he didn't want to scare me, you see?
Uh-huh.
So he motioned me out. So I came out, and I started to bring my bow cushions with me, and I had one chocolate bar left, which I shoved it down in my jacket, because I didn't know if it was okay. Which I wound up giving him, by the way. I wound up giving him, I think it was a Clark bar, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, he starts walking toward me, and I kind of shuffled out, and he motioned to me to put the stuff back in there. So I put the cushions in my canteen. I had a canteen of water and all that stuff. I was a good Boy Scout. And he comes up to within about 2 feet of me, and he just stops. And I stopped, of course, and he looked at me right in the eyes. Now, what I saw was the face of a very handsome, Oriental-looking boy about my age. There was a slight fuzziness about his face, but he had normal kind of ears. He had a normal nose. He had a normal mouth. But he was a different type of looking Oriental. Not Japanese or Mongolian or Chinese. It was a different type of Oriental look, but it was extremely well defined and refined. Okay, and his hands, he had digits just like mine, thumb and 4 fingers, same shape, same body, legs. He had toes. He was a humanoid, but of a totally different species, not reptilian. I'm going to make that point right now, okay?
Okay.
I don't even want to get into this whole reptilian type thing. And I mean, we could go on and on and on and on, and it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder, okay? Humanoid, not reptilian, benevolent, not negative, okay? And when he stopped, he looked me right in the eye, and I could see color of his eyes were kind of a turquoise light brown. I've never seen the color eyes like that, just like human eyes. Thin eyelashes. He definitely had hair, kind of short hair, hard to tell. I never ever touched him or his. I did touch his clothes. He asked me to touch his clothes, but I never touched him physically. He said to me, I asked him, I said, other than we shook hands, but we both had gloves on. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So other than that, I never physically touched him. And it was more than warmth and more than understanding and more than communication, because he knew what I was thinking before I was throwing the thought, and therefore he was able to respond to me in a much more perfect manner, because he understood more deeply my sudden anxieties and my fears. He realized that I was a creature out of my element. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And he had the ability to read my mind and my emotions. So thank God for that. So just outside there in just a couple of minutes, we established a bond, and I felt totally and completely safe with him. Because, don't forget, this is not the first time I've communicated with him. I had been communicating with him telepathically for years and years. He was the same kid in the classroom with me who I was paired up with. So we literally grew up together. But most of that was blocked from me. Remember I told you I was going on these OBEs until the age of 8? All of a sudden, about 8.5 years old, everything just stopped. I used to be able to, I couldn't wait at night. Usually weekends and Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Those when those EBEs occurred. Don't ask me why. It was always the same dates. So on those dates, I was always the first one to get, in the tub, brush my teeth, get my jammies on, up to the top bunk of the bed. My little brother was in the bottom. My sister was over in the corner in her little junior bed. And I couldn't wait for the lights to go out. Remember, every good Catholic kid said his Our Father and Hail Mary every night. I had to say one of each. And then I would pretend like I was sleeping. And all of a sudden, there would be like a light over me. And then, whoosh, boom, I was gone. Right out through the wall, right out through the window or whatever, just an embodiment as if I was gone. And then when I would re-emerge on the other end of it, of the beam, I would be in the classroom and there would be Elan. And we would have these incredible classroom sessions all the way back to 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, so here is Elan standing in front of me, my friend, who just saved my life out in the lake. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So he says, you know, would you like to come aboard? You know, at my father's invitation, we would like to be your hosts. So I said, after a little trepidation, I told you, flashed through my mind, didn't I, about the thing? I said, yes, of course. And he said, all right. He said, I'm going to walk over to where you are. And he said, I'm going to turn around and we're both going to walk back to where I just left. He said, do you understand? He said, do not leave my side. He said, do not make any turns. He said, do not fall behind me. He said, because everything is sequential. In other words, everything has a moment and a time in their technology and with these machines. And it's important that we be there at a certain moment in time to fulfill the energies and the transfers that were about to take place. And he said, and I don't want you to reach out and try to touch anything. And he said, when I tell you to take a deep breath, he says, you take a real deep breath. He said, and when you take your next breath, he said, you'll be inside the ship. It was just that simple of him talking to me and me understanding. So he comes up to me and he turns around and he slips his left arm into my right arm, you know, as if a good friend was you know, walking you off to a waiting stagecoach or a ship. You know, you were going to go away on a long train trip or something. You know, and and I remember when he slipped his arm through my arm. By the way, I was wearing my adopted Uncle Sam's flight jacket. He was an Air Force pilot in World War II, and he was one of 30 professional Army Air Force pilots that were sent to photograph Roswell, New Mexico, the 2 crash sites. By the way, there were 2 sites, not one. There were more than one. There were more than 2 aliens that were retrieved. They were dead. My uncle was part of that photographic team. So once again, you see, Michael, the strange coming together of these UFO events. You see? Mm-hmm. That happened when I was like 6 or 7 or 8, something, however old I was in 1947, because he got out of the service then, and I was the only one. Apparently, I was one of the only people he trusted to tell the story to. And they warned him, do not tell your wife, you know, do not tell your kids, because, you know, then you will put them in danger. It's a national secret, and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, I got it out of him. So you see, I believed UFOs, and mind you, I had that happen at an early age, and guess what's sitting out before me, and guess what comes flying out of that ship? A flying saucer with people on it. So don't tell me they don't exist. And I'm saying to myself, that's real. Don't touch it, he told me. Don't touch it. So we're walking toward the spot where he originally was. I didn't see the mark. He did. We turned around and we faced the ship. I asked him why, and he said, well, he said, they're keeping an eye on us, and I just want to let them know everything's okay. And I thought, that's a hell of a good thing, dude. I'm glad you did that. See, his mother and dad and everything, they were watching through some portal or some kind of camera to be sure we were all right. So we walked into the zone, and we stopped. His arm is still engaged through my arm in a warm, and he's got me kind of tight on him so that I don't wander anywhere, see? And he said, close your eyes. I said, all right. He said, now on the count of 3, you know, just like in the movies, count of 3, he said, I want you to take a real deep breath, and don't exhale till I tell you to. He said, 1, 2, 3, and sure enough, it was there, and there was this instantaneous flash that it was like I could see it through my closed eyelids, and it was multicolored. It went blue, green, red, purple, orange, pimento, and then suddenly I was no longer out at the edge of the field standing on the rocks, but I was standing inside of this ship. All the corridors were circular because it was the shape of a traditional flying saucer. By the way, it had 3 levels. We were on the middle level. which contained the theater and the research labs and the navigation. It had a huge copulus section at the top of the ship that went up around 15 feet. It's like a conning tower that raised up and they could see around, but it was filled with sensors and cameras and all kinds of stuff. Okay.
All right, and Dr. Wren, I just want to say that we're going to probably have quite a few calls coming in on Planet X.
Okay.
So if we could very soon, I'd like to get to that.
We'll do that right next.
Okay.
Because it's all connected.
Okay. All right.
All right. Oh, you want me to go ahead now with that?
Oh, if you would, yes, please.
Oh, yeah, okay,
A lot of people are wondering about it. And
okay, so at the end of that experience on that ship, there was like a 30-minute classroom session where I was shown in great detail the tribulation period, the entire structure of how the solar system is formed, and about wormwood. I suppose we should touch upon that, this Planet X thing real quick. But I was shown in detail what I was supposed to do, the mission, the book, and everything. And so when I started writing the book, it directly reminded me of my experience, because for the last 45 minutes I was in another classroom setting, and I saw a series of events leading up to what I believe is known as the end time period, the biblical end time. Not the Armageddon part, just the end time period, the ending of one cosmic age to another. And that's what this whole mystical Mayan 2012 thing is. Unfortunately, it also involves an element of earth changes, which leads us to what does Planet X have to do with any of this? All right, let me tell you what my thinking is and the theory behind the book and why we wrote it. We believe that this object that NASA talked about and suggested and named as Planet X is, in fact, a brown dwarf star, as U.S. News and World Report ordered that NASA says it was. And we believe that this particular object returns to visit planet Earth's solar system. It does not come through the solar system. It doesn't hit anything. It doesn't crash into anything. It circles up from underneath, from behind the sun, up and over the South Polar region. And when doing so, it sends out huge gravitational fields, electromagnetic fields, creating different types of vortices. You see, everything out there is mostly celestially controlled, but the controls are through massive power grid systems and massive and fields of mass and things like gravity and reverse gravity. Okay, things most of us don't even know about.
Now the Hubble,
what happens is
the Hubble telescope had picked up a picture of what they said was a planet being engulfed by a sun. It looked to me like it was actually an object moving away from the sun. And I was wondering if that wasn't Planet X that they caught, and they're just trying to call it something else.
That particular report, I failed to see. I didn't know it existed. It could have been. There have been many reports now. Many people are taking photographs. Many people are writing articles about it. I think people in New Zealand and Australia and the south tip of Africa are beginning to be able to photograph this thing. You see?
Yeah.
South America also. You see? Now, if it is this planetary body, which I believe is a brown dwarf star, where did it come from? And why is it back here? Well, it's back here because it's completing the return visit portion of its cyclical cycle up to and around our solar system, out and behind, slingshotted again by the sun back out into deep space about every 3,600 years. And in our book, The Return of Planet X, we track this event backwards in time, reversing the clock, going backwards to at least 10, 15, 20 different events, just like what we're beginning to experience right now. Because we believe that the last time Planet X came through here or threatened the solar system, remember, whatever threatens the sun threatens everything that the sun controls. Why? Because without the sun, there is no life on Earth. There would be Earth, but there'd be no life on Earth.
Right.
So, whatever affects the sun, even minutely, automatically affects all of the planets. Some in some ways and some in others, because they have different gravity and force fields. However, if the sun starts behaving badly or stops functioning properly, then it could affect especially the innermost planets, such as the Earth. As a matter of fact, Michael, our sun has not been behaving properly for about the last 12 to 16 months. It's been on a very quiet hiatus time, when in fact, as July and August would be approaching this coming 2011, the sun should be reaching its maximum solar peak, following and ending its normal 11-year cycle, coming across a peak period in which there should be heavy sunspots and solar storms and solar blast emissions. In other words, giving us and everybody else down the line a rough time, you see. Well, its sun has been extremely quiet. And all of a sudden, and because it's been quiet, the Earth has not been receiving the right amount of energy and in the right form that it's been accustomed to. So we say there's global warming, or maybe it's global cooling. Well, there's a third option, which is the most common sense one. If you observe the patterns and track the trends and check the charts, we're apparently just one terribly confused planet. Is it spring or summer? Should I be a tornado, or maybe I'll be a hurricane and a tornado, or maybe I'll just be an ice storm, or maybe we'll suddenly have a hailstorm and then it will destroy a whole hundreds of fields of wheat and rice and stuff. Okay, where we're going with this is real simple. There's something really, really wrong with the way the planet's been behaving. The earthquakes, big ones, big cities, lots of people killed.
Yes.
2004, 2005, that unbelievable 9.0 quake that shook Java and sent tsunamis out. Can you imagine? Over 285,000 people died in less than 45 minutes. It's staggering and it's appalling. And then we have the Chile and the several other major
there's been
so there's something wrong, you see.
And Glenn Kennedy is with us now too. So
hello, Glenn.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, sir. Welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you. I had a quick question. I don't know if you know this or not, but I was doing some research on it, and today I saw that looking back at some videos, and they were saying that I guess in what was it? I guess they were reporting how far this thing was out, and in U.S. News and World Report, they said that I guess in 1982 that it was like 50 billion miles away, and then I hear another report that in 1992 that it was like 7 billion miles from the sun. But what that doesn't make sense to me. One of those numbers has to be wrong, because you know, as this thing gets closer, it's going to speed up because of the gravitational forces. And if you just do if it was just a linear type thing, if it covered that much distance between 83 and 92, it would have already been here. So I guess one of those numbers is wrong. But do you have any specific time frames on, I mean, what's your best guess on when this thing would come here? Were you ever given that information by anybody or by the...
Well, I can easily, you and I can calculate it together, okay? Just follow me on these dates now, okay? Just go along with me. As early as 1983, NASA made the announcement that they had discovered this incoming object they called the Planet X. Fact number one. Fact number two, a year later, U.S. World News Report reported that this object, like you said, was now inbound toward our solar system at a high rate of speed. And they said they think that it might very well be a brown dwarf star. Okay, now that's 1983. Then 1984 comes along, and there's another report that indicates that there is some kind of a celestial body that is inbound, and they're not quite sure yet what they're going to tell the public. Now that, I think, was an honest press release. For the first time they're saying, we don't know. Then you don't hear another thing about it until most recently. Now that means one of two things. That it's very, very real, and or if it's not real, there could be a real problem with press and PR, and how does the government allow something like this to happen, the hysteria. The better bet says there's probably some smoke under this fire. And if NASA itself is talking about it in the kind of positive terms and calling it what it called it, when it called it, in the various years talking about it, then I would believe that there probably is an incoming body. NASA wouldn't lie to us, would they? Michael, would they lie to us?
Absolutely would.
Oh, Michael, you're so cynical. I can't believe that. No, I think when NASA lies, Michael, I think it has to be for some very, very, very good reasons. I just credit NASA with too much guts and daring and doing the right thing. Listen, we could discuss what this whole space station thing is all about, but I think that's another show too, okay?
Okay.
All right, now, back to this thing of the mission, writing the book in the end times, and what's it got to do with UFOs and flying saucers, and what the heck was that whole thing about up in Canada? Well, I'm beginning to try, I'm more than beginning. I'm pulling together a series of what appear to be bizarre events, all leading to the fact that I was going to become, they told me in this classroom session, I saw a whole bunch of things, including my future, where I would, at the very end time period, I would produce several books. The books are now written. The first one I've just had in release. I'm not ready yet to release the other 3 books. They're written. I have them in bound form. The mission is to get the word out that there's more going on with the planet and with this Planet X thing called wormwood. We believe that it is the same celestial, heavenly monster object that's called wormwood. If you go to the New Testament, and the last book is called the Book of Revelation, written by St. John the Divine, the only disciple of Christ that was not martyred, died of natural causes, and was spared that agony. He wrote down the words that came to him via 2 of the Lord's best angels. They came to John on Patmos in exile in the 1st century, and he wrote down the story as was told to him from messages from Jesus on the Mount. And if you go to verse 8, verse 8, line 11, verse 11, it says, and the name of the star was Wormwood, W-O-R-M-W-O-O-D. Do not confuse it with this whole Chernobyl thing. Stop. It's not connected at all. Just happens to have a similar meaning. Now, why is this real significant? It's because this particular book in the New Testament appears to be an accurate indicator of history happening even as we speak. Now, one can say, well, that's what everybody's been saying about the book of Revelation since it was written. It applied medieval times and times and times and off at the King's Head times and all that. Well, that may be, because we think it is one of those very special documents that can be applied and used over and over and over again, because history always repeats itself over and over. Same scenarios. So I think that, once again, it is karmic. See? We create our own reality. That's what reality engineering is all about. And the message that the ETs were working with me on was, we create or destroy by the product of our own thinking and our own believing and our own physical effort. It takes those 3 things for us to change our reality system or systems. And their feeling is, if they can help us change our way of thinking about how we perceive reality and get rid of the camouflage and the mistrust and the dishonesty and all of those things, those evils. I know, it sounds like this huge cooking pot. You know, you throw in this, you throw in that, you take a little sip of this Kool-Aid, and suddenly the whole world straightens out, and nobody hates anybody, no more wars. Doesn't happen like that.
No, and it's not going to happen like that. And Dr. Rand,
No, and it's not going to happen.
We have a call coming in, so I'm going to take this call and let her ask a question. Autumn from South Carolina, you are on Late Night in the Midlands with Dr. Rand, Glenn Kennedy, and myself.
Hello. I have a question. I've been listening this whole time, and I hate to say this, but I'm really confused. I want to know about Planet X and what it has to really do with us and what is going to happen. I've been hearing so much stuff about Planet X, and I want to know why, if it was so close to the sun, why didn't the sun's gravity take it in and destroyed it? I don't understand this whole Planet X thing.
All right. Can I take your crack at it?
Please do.
Okay.
All right. Listen, thanks for your call. It was an excellent question, and it's a tough one, too, but I think I can answer it for you, okay?
Okay.
All right. All right. We believe that Planet X, first of all, is not a planet, but a brown dwarf star. It's not a planet. It's just a name, excuse me, that's been applied to it because NASA itself named it. You see, I didn't name it that. So let's change the concept from discussing Planet X to discussing this brown dwarf star, which we believe is called wormwood, from biblical reference. Now, what is it? It's a failed star. It could be the size of Saturn, or it could only be the size of our moon. It doesn't make any difference, except the size is relative to its mass. In this case, this object, because of what it's made of, could have a mass 60 times that of Saturn. 60 times the mass, and it doesn't even have to be the size of Saturn. So this object disturbs, displaces, and changes all the characteristic of the space that it passes through, the null points, the voids, and whatever space is affected because of its gravitational fields. So it's been approaching our planet now for about 9.5 years, and we are now beginning to feel its effects as it emerges out from behind the glare of the sun. It travels in a long, narrow, elliptical orbit. Circles in from behind our sun, is lifted up, and just like in Apollo 13. Remember when the space capsule was slung back toward in the direction of the Earth by the gravitational forces of the moon? It too, we believe, is slingshotted back toward the Earth because it could be under the influence of what's known as a giant blue black star, one of incredible power that burns actually blue-black. And if this is the case, it would explain how it's once again slingshotted back toward our sun and our solar system as part of this regular trek of events about every 3,600 to 4,000 years. Now, I mentioned to you that we believe the last time this so-called Planet X, which is not on that planet but a brown dwarf star, came back about 1447 BCE. That's before the Common Era, about 1447 BC. It appears that this is the time archaeologically and religiously and legend-wise is about the same time period in its actual year, 1447 BCE, that Moses was very busy trying to get the Israelites freed out of captivity in Egypt, where they were held bondage for 400 years under Pharaoh dynasties. Now, if we're right about it, and we think we are, then this would totally correlate with all of the powerful physical changes and what appeared to be apparent magic that came from the rod and the staff of Moses as he stood before Pharaoh making his demands to let my people go. It would explain the rivers turning red and the locusts and the frogs and the firstborn dying. And when he stood there in front of Pharaoh, Pharaoh was just about to give up. It had been, you see, in the movie it only took like, what, 2 hours and 20 minutes, right, for Moses to lead the Israelites out of Egypt and cross the Red Sea. Actually, it was more like 2.5 years, you see. You don't lead 1 million or more people on foot, carrying everything they own, out of one desert and into another in 2.5 hours. So it would explain how this passing of this object over a number of years could be affecting the earth then just as it is now. Anyway, when Moses held out his rod to the sun and he said to Pharaoh, he said, my God is strong enough to stop the sun. Now, why was that significant? Because the Egyptians worshipped Ra, the sun god, you see. They believed that Ra provided everything for the earth, which it did, you see. So they worshipped the sun. So Moses held out the rod and he says, thou shalt not, he said, thou shalt stop. And suddenly the earth lurches, there's great earthquakes across the planet, and that's documented archaeologically, and all of a sudden it appears that Moses, as he held the rod against the sun, had stopped the sun. In fact, what had happened was the Earth's rotation had been interrupted by the electromagnetics and the mass, time, and matter distortions that this huge object was creating with the sun, you see, and it stopped the Earth in its spinning. And then after 3 hours, he held it for 3 hours, and Pharaoh and he watched, and Moses lowers his staff, and all of a sudden the Earth lurches back again, theoretically, and starts spinning. And that was the event that made Pharaoh let the Israelites go. Why is this all important? Because if you add up the years 2010 and add in 1447, you come out with something like 3,560 years, which is real close. In other words, if you combine the two, that's how long it was before it's coming back now. So that's well within only about 140 years of the 3,600-year cycle. Now, that coincidence and those numbers are a little scary, and they cannot be dismissed. See? So this whole pattern of what we're talking about tonight, what is Planet X? Where is it going? How does it affect us? Why should we worry about it? Well, it's already affecting our solar system because it is affecting the performance of our sun. And that's what's causing, we believe, all these weather aberrations and all these natural disasters and all these terrible things that are happening. And I would say to you, and it also includes things like plague and severe weather patterns and all kinds of stuff. I'm extremely worried, Michael, about this coming hurricane season. I like if I could.
Did we lose him? Michael, can you hear me?
Hello, Glenn. This is Mr. Skeptic, the co-host. How are you doing?
Good. Did we lose the connection?
I believe we lost the host, so therefore we lost the guest as well. Michael will be joining us shortly, I'm sure. Probably just a little technical difficulties.
Yeah.
But how you doing tonight, Glenn?
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. We're getting it back on track, I think.
Yeah, we are. This is live radio. That stuff happens. So what's been going on, Glenn? Anything you can report while we're sitting here waiting for this little mishap to...
Oh, are we on the air still?
Yes, we're still on the air. We're going.
I didn't know that we were on the air. Otherwise, that I kept talking. Yeah,
That's okay.
I just one of the things that I wanted to ask Dr. Rand about is you know, I guess it depends on, as this Planet X is coming into the solar system, depends on the orientation of the Earth around the sun. Probably is going to determine how bad it is. In other words, if it's on the opposite side of the sun from us, the effects won't probably be near as bad as if it comes same side of the sun as ours. Because if you get something with 60 times the mass of Jupiter, I mean, or the Earth, I guess, or if it's got more mass than Jupiter and it's coming in close to the Earth, I mean, that's what could cause the water to come up thousands of feet and so forth. So I guess it all depends on our orientation and how this thing is coming into the solar system. So that's what I wanted to ask Dr. Rand about when he comes back. Is he back on?
Okay, yeah, I'm back. Yes. Apparently my Skype had kicked the bucket on me. So what I'm going to need is for Dr. Rand to call back in to the show. So, Mr. Co-host, if you would, give Dr. Rand a call back and let him know that he's going to have to call in.
Sure.
It's been one of those nights. Oh, my goodness. But, I was wondering what happened. The Skype just kicked the bucket on me, and I can't get it to go back up. So,
no problem, Michael. Mr. Skeptic will do that for you. Me and Glenn were just chatting here while you came back, and I will try to get Dr. Rand back on the line for us.
Yeah, I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't know that I was still on the air, so I'd never been on.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you were, because you just. I says, what the hell is going on? I thought I just lost him, but then I found out that I was gone too, so not good.
Yeah, I was just talking, and when he comes back on the air, Dr. Rand, are you there yet?
No, he's not here yet. As soon as he is, I'll let you know.
I was just talking about it, and I just think that, the effects on Earth are going to be totally determined, I think, by our position around the sun in relation to Planet X as it comes in. I would think, from what I've studied, if it comes in and kind of goes around the sun opposite of where we are, that's probably the best case. If it comes around kind of the same side of the sun as it's coming in on, then I imagine that the gravitational is going to be, even that much stronger. And that's, maybe...
Okay, hold on. I think I'm going to get Dr. Rand on here right now.
Hello again. We got cut off.
Yes, we did. This time it was my Skype system's fault. So
okay.
Well, we're back, Dr. Rand. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. Sorry, everybody. So,
Dr. Rand, I just real quick on what you were talking about before you left, or before we got cut off there.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about Moses, I can definitely see how the gravitational effects. That's what they say is that it can stop the Earth, and then as it starts to reorientate, then it will start to rotate again, and then that's when you have a pole shift or whatever's going to happen. But my question is also...
Sir, we don't believe it's going to be anything like that.
Okay.
That's not at all where I'm going with my observations or my research. However, I do believe, sir, that we are in for a very rough upcoming 13 to 18 months.
Do you feel like
going into the December 21st, 2012, and I'll explain what that particular range of dates is all about. But more importantly, we're seeing the effects of what's happening to the planet. It's acting very, very badly now. These new volcanic threats coming from Iceland. You see, the volcano that's going off right now, sir, is pretty bad, nasty volcano. But the two that are its two twin sisters are much bigger and badder. The two of them are about 30 to 60 to 100 miles due south of this one that's erupting. If they go off, it'll be 10 times as bad, each one, as this little volcano. So the threats are not only becoming more menacing, they're becoming bigger and nastier in scope. For instance, earthquakes. Now we're getting larger and larger and larger series of earthquakes, not just isolated ones here and there. Something is building up. Something is going on. Something is afoot.
You said this was going to happen on the last show, too. You did. You called it right out, and it's been going right in order.
And I'm not, listen, Michael, I'm not happy about it. I'm not thrilled that my worst thoughts are coming true. It's just that the urgency to discuss it becomes even more paramount, because as we're speaking tonight, this thing is unfolding in Israel. I mean, we touched upon it earlier in the show. Now, I think if this deteriorates any worse, it's started, okay? And once it starts, it's like a firecracker. You got to rush to put it out, or it's going to set off a big bang. And when that bang happens, all the other firecrackers are going to start to go off, you see? If you can accept that analogy.
Okay.
And now you're dodging a field of blowing firecrackers. And suddenly, somebody sets off the cherry bomb, which is the big one, and then somebody comes up with the big boy, and there's a suitcase nuclear blast or a bad chemical attack. And that finally, definitely starts it.
Do you feel like there's going to be massive flooding and so forth, like there has been in the past, I guess?
Well, it would depend on the type of earth or natural disaster that we're referring to. Flooding occurs because of a particular form or a series of storms, you see. Now, or you can have flooding from tsunamis or what's known as tidal waves, you see.
Right.
Or hurricanes. I mean, there's a whole number of ways. An earthquake could collapse an entire coastline, for instance, which has happened hundreds and hundreds of times around the world. Whole cities have collapsed under the sea when their shorelines gave way. You see?
Did you see that?
And we track these type of tragedies in the book. Yes, sir?
I say, did you see that big sinkhole that
was
in the news?
Crazy.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, that hole looked like something out of the movies. I mean, it was just a perfect circle, and it was just surreal looking.
You don't think Mother Earth is upset, do you, or confused about anything? You don't think so, do you?
Yeah, definitely something's going on. I was just wondering if you thought, I mean, because my feeling is it depends on, if this Planet X is coming in, depends on how close it comes, because if it comes on the same side of the sun to us or as it revolves around, you get something that massive. I mean, just think what the moon does, how big of a tidal, difference there is versus something as big, what did you say it was, like 60 times bigger than
its mass, regardless of its size, its mass is 60 times that of Jupiter. And it could be as large as Saturn.
Oh.
But I mean, something like
or
that.
It could be only the size of our moon. Whatever it is, it's deadly. It's been coming back periodically. Cultures and religions of the world all call it by different names. Our Christian concept is in the book of Revelation, says it's called wormwood. It fits all the patterns. Everything in chapter 8, by the way, we're not going on a religious rant here. No, not at all. I'm just stating the facts. The facts happen to be displayed in one of the books of the Christian Bible, the book of Revelation. Now, why there? I think because it's extremely relevant. Why not there? It appears in all the other ancient religions, even in the Hindu, in the Confucius. All of these belief systems contain a savior of sorts, coming out of the sun, associated with the sun god, the father of the sun, all this kind of stuff. And you begin to see a pattern emerging that suggests some of it's got to be true. Doggone it, some of it's got to be true. Now, if we're right about this object coming in, see, I don't want to call it Planet X. People get hung up on that. We believe it's a brown dwarf star called wormwood. Once this object, which is now very, it's in its earliest phases now of coming out from behind the glare of the sun. Yes, they're photographing it. They've been photographing it for at least a year and a half. Keep in mind, this incredible distance that this object is traveling. I mean, this isn't something that's going on a 20-minute tour of the solar system.
Yeah.
It's going to take several years, as it did in Moses' time. You see, that's why it probably took 3.5 to 4 years, because our intense weather patterns are now going to start escalating even more so. I'm extremely worried about this coming hurricane season.
So am I.
You know the stats. The stats that they've issued are not good at all. Possibly 3 to 4 major Cat 4s and 5s. That's pretty scary, okay?
Right.
Plus, that's only a fraction. I think they said 12 to 18 predicted storms. Predicted, way above last year. It's almost equal to the year 2005, which was a deadly, deadly year for hurricanes. That's when we got hit several times. Why are we even talking about this? It's because it's a reality that is going to be stalking us. June 1st, the season started. See? They've already used up the name, the first name of the for the tropical storm season. But it was a Pacific storm. Nevertheless, it affected Central America. Whether it comes from the Pacific or the Atlantic, it's still a hurricane. You see? Mm-hmm. Now, with this awful, awful devastation of this broken oil rig, this could send oil around the world. It could become that bad.
Right.
I hope not. And I understand there is hope tonight. I haven't been in front of a television for about 48 hours, so I'm not privy, but I understand that they've had some luck capping that well. There was some good news, at least I hope there was. Okay? Now, if this hurricane season develops as bad as they say, we're in for a really, really rough time. And I'm not going to go into any amount of detail. We can all imagine the type of devastation that we're talking about. So rather than talk about it, I'll just say it'll be very, very bad. Now,
sure, one hurricane after another, you know?
Absolutely. Now, the question is, what can we do about it? Well, the first thing that we can do is take it very seriously and then individually calculate for each one of us. Let's say we live near a large body of water. Let's say you lived somewhere on the East Coast. And let's say you've been affected by storms in the past, like in the Carolinas. If there should be a major global earthquake of any consequence, and there very well could be, we could lose 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4 major world cities. If we only lost one, just one, it would be devastating to the world's economies. If you lost a Rio, or if you lost a London, or if you lost New York, or you lost Los Angeles, or you lost Paris, France, for whatever reason, you take them off the grid, to crash the system. You lose a city that size. Imagine losing 3 or 4 of them. Imagine this. Some kind of a solar emission or a solar blast or some kind of a huge gravitational field shift that this planet is causing the sun to act strangely. We get hit with a solar blast and we knock out all of the electrical grid system in North America. It includes Canada, United States, and Mexico, right down to Central America. No grids for a year. Can you imagine what the consequence would be? It stops. Everything stops.
And everybody around the world has, no safety backup plans. Nobody has years of food stored, hardly, very rarely. So, I mean, that's where you're going to get the starvation, the diseases, and everything else.
Yeah, everybody says, why do you talk about these things? Why do you even bring them up? Can't you think of good things? It's because we're already experiencing these things. I'm not making them up. I'm not saying them to make anybody afraid, disoriented, upset, or depressed. It's happening as we're speaking. So if we don't talk about it, we can't get prepared. And when it should, God forbid, it does hit you or me or some of our loved ones, it's not like, well, we told you so, and we warned you, and we asked you, and we pleaded with you to just figure out who you are, where you are. Do you need to change anything about your life? Do you have your possessions in order? Do you have safety and food and supplies for your wife of 3 kids and 2 cats and 2 dogs? And do you have things like milk and water and candles and matches, the very basic things you would need to support 5 people, 2 dogs, 2 cats, and goldfish? The answer probably is, I haven't even got time to figure out about picking up the laundry from the cleaners Tuesday night. You see? And I'm not making light of it, guys. I'm really not. I'm just having a discussion, okay? It's not an interview. It's a discussion.
Do you think that the government will ever come clean and say, we've got Planet X inbound, blah, 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 or do you think that they will just, you know, just let it happen?
No, there'll be a general announcement, and it'll be very well planned. It'll be very well calculated, and first of all, I do not see a conspiracy. I never have. It's just part of the great big universal plan. You cannot call it a conspiracy because you have to prove intent or evil, you see?
Right.
I think that what's happening is, of course the governments of the world knows what's going on.
Right.
Of course the United States does. Of course all that TARP money hasn't been spent. What do you think? Why do you think they're just sitting on it? They're sitting on it because they know doggone well that they're going to need billions and billions of dollars just to feed the people and give them water and some kind of safety. See? This thing could get really bad. Imagine if we lose a major city. We lost New Orleans. That hadn't been rebuilt. We lost the Gulf Coast, and now we're losing more of the Gulf Coast with this oil tragedy.
Yeah.
Now, something better start getting done here, kids. Hey, partner, she's getting out of control. Okay? I'm not making light of it. I'm not making light of it. What I'm saying is we are in deep, deep, deep trouble. Not only economically, but I think even morally and politically and spiritually, we've lost our mark. We've lost our edge. And now is the time that is going to try men's hearts and spirits. Not so much from terrorism, although that's a big nasty. See? Now we got to worry about that. See? And I'm concerned that terrorists strike when the enemy is weak. You see? That's the law of the jungle. The weak attack only in defense, whereas the strong attack just to attack.
Right.
So I think that if we should befall any more tragedy here, it could be that these terrorist cells could be unleashed. Certainly if Israel goes to war with Palestine or Syria or Turkey, you know, something's deteriorating with Turkey all of a sudden, and it's extremely disturbing. Turkey seems to be siding with the Palestinians. The Arabs apparently now are taking sides. That's not a good side when the bad guys take sides. Okay? All right, now, UFOs in 2012 and Planet X. What I think we are about ready to face is a very difficult period of earth changes, complicated with a series of political, geopolitical, scientific, terroristic in nature, changing of governments, whole economies possibly collapsing, the initiation of the one world order system. I'll call it a system, you know, with everything built in. You know, the whole credit card, the chip, and everything. Talk about having a chip. You'll certainly be required to have some form of a chip identification. Who knows? I think it's coming. I think it's right around the corner. Now, how do UFOs play into it? Real simple. There's a concept, not only in the Christian religion, but in almost every religion of the world, whether it be primitive or otherwise, that there is a period associated with the end times similar to something called the rapture, where the God or the angels or the good guys will come in and save the little guys from the bad guys or from dying in natural disasters. The rapture, the Lord comes to gather his flock, like in Matthew 29:31, and he shall gather his elect from the four corners of the earth, from one end of heaven to the other. I think that we are entering this biblical end time period. Just happens to coincide with everything that's going on. I think that's unique that's as unique as any point in history or time or definition of conscience for man. We are sitting at a most unique period in the history and destiny of mankind. We're about to change the age that the Earth and the solar system is going into, because on or about December 21st, 2012, this object, this wormwood, this brown dwarf star, will have already passed its point of return back out into the solar system, out past beyond the solar system, and back out to its blue-black third star. And once that happens, the Earth will begin to settle down. But it'll be torturous, just like it was on the way in. We're going to have problems on the way out. Now, they could be bad problems, or they could be not so bad problems. We may only have a series of 1 or 2 major earthquakes. Hopefully, the hurricane season 2010 will not be bad. But if it's bad in 2010, good God, what could 2011 be like? See, we still have 2 hurricane seasons between now and December 21st, 2012. We're still 2 years away from the bottom dropping. I think, though, that we need to be very aware that things are deteriorating. See?
Yes, they certainly.
And this oil thing, guys, and this oil thing is only the tip of the iceberg. Imagine if a major quake strikes down the Mississippi Valley, originating either as part of or behind the huge fault that runs in the Mississippi River, and suddenly rips its way all the way to the end of New Orleans and out into the Gulf, where there are like 1,200 oil rigs. You see? Right. Can you imagine if 4 or 5 of those get snapped off at their core with a big earthquake? Oh boy!
Right.
We have a lot to contemplate. We really, really do. And to laugh at all this, and to say people like myself who write crazy books about getting prepared, damning food supplies. We don't need any food supplies. We'll make it. I'll just go to the store and get it. Well, I don't think so.
I went through Hurricane Ivan in Pensacola area, and I can tell you right now, the stores run out in about 4 hours. I'm talking to nothing will be in that store within 6 hours.
And we're expecting snow here. Stores clear out over this way. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, just-in-time delivery means if you don't have your food, you're going to be stuck with what you got, and that's
absolutely. In chapter 7, I talk about what the government knows and doesn't know and should be telling us. See, like I said, I'm not a conspiracy person. I do think that there are contingency plans. I discuss them in the book. They are also not doing certain things they should be doing. But on the plus side, in chapter 8, I talk about how to prepare, how to set up the supplies, what you would need of everything for 30 days. Even that chapter alone is worth reading. If you don't read any of the other chapters, at least you can't say, I didn't warn you that you need 30 days of this, of candles, some rice and some macaroni and cheese that you can make with water, all the kind of stuff, cans of tuna fish, lots of cans of chicken, cans of ham, the kind of stuff that you won't be able to buy. You won't be able to buy pot roast and pork chops and chicken wings and potato salad and all that good stuff. See?
You have a better view of our government than I do, I guess. If it was like a movie, it would be wonderful if everybody got a golden ticket and said, "Hey guys, all this time we've been stocking up our underground bases, and here's your ticket, and you need to go to this evacuation center, and we've been preparing for this for 50 years, but somehow I just have the feeling that the only people that are going to be down in those bunkers and so forth will be the people like Hillary Clinton and Obama and all these people that are, that they think are important, more important than the average Joe out there that's paid for it all with the sweat of his brow. But
sure.
I hope you're right. I hope they at least give us some warning. I
think they'll help and serve as many people as possible. It's just the absolute optimism in me. Even though I don't agree with what's going on in the country right now in many respects, I have to believe that they do have the best concerns of the people, and I want to believe that, because I think if they don't, then I think there will be a rebellion here, not only in this country, but most other countries, at the inefficiency and the dishonesty of the governments that rule them. R-U-L-E, rule them.
Yeah.
See? Now,
look at Katrina, though, and it's like, can you imagine, Planet X? It's like, oh, my God. If they can't handle a Katrina and do it and do the people right, or even this oil spill, my God, I just no faith in them whatsoever at this point. I mean, I hope you're right, and I hope that there's some good people in government that will get the word out. One question for me, and then I guess we'll start hitting some
go ahead.
calls. Do you feel like that we're going to be able to see that second sun, or, I know that this thing is only visible with an infrared gear right now, but do you feel like
you'll be able to see it going? Yes, absolutely. Going into, I think, April, May, and June of 2012, you'll be able to photograph it. It'll already be announced by then. It'll be public fare. The reason that I do believe they will have to announce it is that too many people will be able to see it. They're already photographing it. I've seen numerous pictures of it, but it's being very carefully monitored. They're not allowing the publishing of the pictures. I think if one comes across the AP or the national press, it's either confiscated or it's discussed before its release. I think that they are going to tell. I think it's not going to be a lot of fanfare. Everybody already knows. Millions of people know about this.
Yeah.
Millions of people are now reading the book of Revelation. Not because of me or my book. It's because it's the general buzz that's going around the world. There are I think there's 100,000 websites devoted to Planet X and the end of times and flying saucers and how it's all related and all the Roswell and all. There's thousands and thousands of reference points. So if you want to research it, go for it.
I'm sorry. Have you seen how the government's actually trying to say that they want to license people with blogs like ours and so forth, where you will have to be approved to get a license to be a, quote, journalist, because the regular media is dying and so forth, and that you will have to put the government's official line on your, if you have a website that actually tells something contradictory to the government line, that you will have to put government propaganda on your own website. I mean, that was just announced, just in the last week. I mean, this is just mind-boggling to think that, they are basically trying to take away our First Amendment of free speech. I mean, that's just Orwellian.
Yeah.
It could get a lot worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Absolutely.
All right. Now, once again, all we're talking about is, gloom and doom and the collapse of this, and oh my God, what are we going to do? Well, it's going to be rough. Doesn't mean we're all going to die. Doesn't mean society's going to collapse. Doesn't mean the United States is going to fold up its cards and sink into that sinkhole that opened up. But what it does mean is we have to get our heads out of the sand. And those of us that can think and write and broadcast and opinionate, what we need to do is sit down and put a game plan together. The only way to make anything work is to have a game plan. First rule of business 101. What are you going to do? So I would like to propose that you could use your show as a standard. We can have people start sending in information to you, their thoughts, their views, their ideas. Are we right on tonight, or are we off in Alice in Wonderland somewhere? I think that once we start communicating with the public like we're doing tonight, I'm very real, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just doing my job. Sometimes I'm funny about it, and sometimes I'm serious, and sometimes I'm dramatic. But I'm getting the job done. We've been on now for about 3 hours and 15 or 20 minutes. I love talking to everybody. What I'm talking about is no mystery. Oh, there's a little bit of suspense in it, but it's all true. It's all happening before you. Just read your newspapers, go to your blogs, look on the internet, look on Real TV and, YouTube and Facebook and all this stuff. Everything that's happening in the world is actually a product of someone's thought. Without the thought, you can't create the substance or the action. So I would say we've really, really, really screwed things up real bad. Okay? The question is, what do we do about it? Well, it's self-responsibility. I go back to the same thing I spoke about 30 minutes ago. Who am I? Why am I here? Should I be here? Am I prepared to deal with emergencies? What about my wife and my kid and my dog and my cat and my goldfish? Oh, and my pet worms? It's a matter of literally sense and sensibility, life and death, future, non-future. I look at it very seriously. I write about it. I speak to people at the checkout line about it. I get opinions. I'm constantly asking questions of total strangers. I get the most fabulous answers. Sometimes I don't agree with the answers, but they're pretty interesting. Now,
you know, Dr. Rand, I also worry, like you said, of these oil rigs that are out there. I mean, when natural disasters do start happening even more frequently than they already have, then you got to worry about nuclear sites.
Right. Yeah, think about
so many other things. Yeah. And I mean, what if the volcanoes do start erupting, and what if our biggest one goes? You know, could that set off nuclear explosions? I mean, so it can get way worse before it gets better, for sure.
Well, let's hope that this does not degenerate. Let us hope that this object coming in has done the worst of its damage, and let's wish that mankind, for all of its brilliance and ingenuity and skill and talent, suddenly realizes that we're destroying ourselves and each other. And this whole terrorism thing, just stop it. Just please get a grip. Okay? No one's going to destroy anybody. You know what I think? I don't think there will ever be an apocalypse. I don't think you'll ever see missiles flying. I'll tell you why. Because I think that the planet itself will just come alive, shake for a couple of days, and shut the whole system down. If the entire planet gets hit by let's say a 12.5 off the scale, crashing the Richter into pieces, a 12 earthquake shakes the world, we would be back to the medieval days. In about 24 hours, you'd have the greatest new Hollywood film ever created, from the future to the past. Okay? And there would be no missiles. There'd be no bombers. There'd be certainly not the ability of the terrorists to function like they would like. And you have a planet basically left in utter chaos. So that would kind of change the complexion of reality and politics and religion and finances and greed and all the other things. Now, if none of this happens, I will be as happy as you could ever imagine. Because then there would be no self-recrimination for me feeling the way I do about things and speaking about them in terms of absoluteness. I know what's going on. No, I'm not a know-it-all. No, I'm not a guru. No, I'm not a poet. And no, I don't make prophecy. But what I do well is read the signs. And all the signs indicate that we're headed for a crash or a showdown of some spiritual, planetary, cosmic nature. Look at it this way. Let's talk about cosmic time in relation to human time or Earth time. Okay. Earth time only exists on the Earth. Only unique to the Earth. Why? I have to understand how the concept of time is derived and the breakdown, moment to moment, second to second. Now, once you leave the influence of the Earth and the Sun, primarily the Earth, time exists in a different dimension and format in many cases. Can be compressed, can be speeded up, or there's no time at all. It's just eternity. Now, as a planet, we're probably 7.5 to 8 billion years old, along with the rest of the solar system. And in terms of human time and experience on the planet, it's probably just a couple of seconds before midnight on the cosmic clock of Earthian time. You see? Just a mere few seconds of time have elapsed since man became sentient and went through all of his silly machinations. Something like 285,000 years, somewhere in there, give or take a couple of different species that didn't make it. Now, what's this got to do with 2012 and Planet X and Wormwood and all that? It's just we're living in one heck of a unique time in the history and destiny and culture of this planet. We're living right now, this show, tonight, we're a part of it. And I think we're going to see the end of it. Not destruction, not total death and mayhem like in the movie 2012, but I think that the planet itself is going through a change of dynamics in its structure, in its makeup, its composition, its environment, and it's passing along with the rest of the solar system into a new relationship with the Milky Way galaxy. You have to try to figure out, first of all, where we fit in as a solar system to the galaxy. We exist as an independent star system located pretty far away from the center of the galaxy, out on one of the large spiral arms. By the way, all planets and stars and asteroid belts and everything in the solar system rotates in a counterclockwise motion. This is extremely important, and I'll explain why. It's a strange phenomenon, but all the other stars and all the other star systems in the galaxy, including the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy itself, it also rotates in a counterclockwise motion. Now, not only is there the Milky Way galaxy, but they do believe now that there might be as many as 100 million other galaxies like the Milky Way, some 10 times as big and 10 times as more powerful than our Milky Way. So when I would ask you, dear sir, whose grand computer program planned the cosmos, I would have to say to you, sir, I have no idea. But I sure don't want to mess with them. You follow me? Some giant, wonderful program keeps this solar system intact and spinning. The Earth and most of the planets in our solar system travel in space at a physical rotational speed. Are you ready for this, Michael? We're spinning in place and in speed traveling through in space at 18.5 miles per second.
Wow.
Or like that. Okay? And we're speeding away from the center of the galaxy and have been for a long, long, long time. Now, what's the significance of the counter-rotation business with the star, with the sun and all the stuff in our solar system and the galaxies and all the other galaxies? We don't know exactly why, but it has something to do with the yin and the yang of the universe. I know I said the universe, not the galaxies. Galaxies make up the universe. So maybe there's another side somewhere where they spin clockwise. You see? All right, now, whatever affects the sun affects the planet, and whatever affects the planet affects everything that lives in it, on it, or under it, or through it, which means it includes mankind. Now, if we're supposed to be the most superior force with the most sophisticated sense of human behavior, then it would behoove us to figure out what's wrong. The minimum of what's wrong, much less how to fix it. I think that this whole awful, awful mess in the Gulf was probably meant to happen no matter what. But it might be the best learning experience that we could possibly ever have to suffer. You see? And once again, we're not prepared. We're just not prepared. So what do we need to do? Well, I think it begins, seriously, guys, with each one of us as an individual. That's where it begins. Where do I live? What do I do? Do I have some provisions? Do I have some dollar bills and fives and tens and $100 and change just somehow put up aside? So if things shut down. By the way, the reason I even bring it up this way is that I went through the '94 Northridge quake in 1994. It was January 17th. I was in a building that partially collapsed. Pretty much thought it was over. Heard the glass breaking and the door jambs snapping and the roof shifting and the foundation grinding, and it was pretty scary. We had no provisions.
I could imagine.
No provisions for at least 30 days. And that's why when I wrote the book, I thought, geez, why not write from my own first-hand experience, I had to dig myself out, and they had to dig me out, It was most incredible. And then the earth shook for like 2 days after that. And I could not leave the crushed apartment building that I was in because I was the manager of that building. And I was responsible for the 5 other families, plus the 10 families in the building next to me, which I managed, plus the 32 other families in a 3-story building that I managed around the corner. So not only did I get trounced and buried and destroyed, I had to be responsible for the lives of just about 280 people. So I understand what responsibility means, and if an earthquake should hit on a global scale, it won't be pretty. You see? I'm not saying that to scare people. It's a fact. It's a fact. Earthquake in Lima was a fact. The earthquakes in Rio are a fact. Chile, a fact. I didn't make it up. I'm not making up the volcanoes. They are happening.
Haiti had a horrible one, and we're here
Haiti.
over in South Carolina. We've got a fault going through here where I live. So, So, what would be my first sign, Dr. Rand, to get the hell out of Dodge?
Well, you see, I'm not sure the solution is getting the hell out of Dodge, unquote. You see, almost anywhere you go, unless you're sitting right on the fracture zone or right in New Orleans. You see, unless you're sitting there, I probably would get out of there this hurricane season because they're going to probably be unpredictable. But the question is, you can't migrate everyone. You can't move cities like New York or Chicago. You can't. Where are you going to move to? You have millions of people dependent on their homes and their lifestyles. What you need to do is to individually figure out your most vulnerable position or place, where you live, where you work, what do you do? Do you work in a 60 or a 2 or 100-story office building, or do you live on a ground floor, or do you work in a ground floor building made out of brick and mortar, or do you live in a pretty safe, medium-sized office building? You take into account that an earthquake could happen literally anywhere. The whole structure of the North American continent is of plate zones and defining earth ridges. It's just tectonics 101. So almost anywhere you go, you could be subject to a natural disaster. Now, we don't normally think about it. We don't normally have earth disasters every other day, but we're in a very different period right now. We are in what's known as an earth changes period, connected to a number of other metaphysical, paranormal situations, experiences, and time periods. You see, this is very difficult in many ways for people to understand. There is a paranormal thing happening way beyond normal science and understanding. It's the unfolding of cosmic time. On or about December 21st, 2012, our solar system, we believe, is going to be sliding into a new relationship. We're going to be crossing the ecliptic plane of the very center of the Milky Way galaxy. It's a very rare time for us.
And the planets will be aligning as well, I'm told.
There'll be several major planetary alignment scenarios. Absolutely. And Venus figures into it very prominently. Venus. Okay? The alignment period that is happening is of a cosmic convergence type structure. A lot of it is theoretical. A lot of it may not be able to be proven. These are cosmic clocks and cosmic times. The Mayans believed that it was the end of cosmic time, not the end of earth time, which suggests that they weren't saying that the world would end physically, but the old world of their understanding, philosophically and physically, would end, and a new age would begin. See? Now, what do we do with that kind of knowledge? Is that we have to learn from their experience. That's another reason we wrote the book. By the way, can I give out a number real quick? If anyone would like to get a book. Yes? Okay?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Everything that we're talking about with the guys tonight is contained in a book called Return to Planet X. It's still available in bookstores. I'm in my third printing, but I recall the books in because I'm afraid that the government is going to come in, crack down, and remove all these books from all the bookstores.
Well, I have my copy, Dr.
I appreciate that. I really do. I really do. So I recall them, and if you'd like to get a signed copy, I'll do a reduced price off the cover, and I'll personally sign it, and I'll pick up the shipping. Call me at 901-336-9660. That's 901-336-9660. I'll probably personally answer the phone, say hello, take the information down, work out a payment schedule with you, and then get you to ship the book. It's a read that you'll want to share with all your friends and neighbors, workmates, children, moms and dads. It's a family-oriented book. It's educational. It's factual. It's got 2,000 references. So it's a book that I wrote for the end times at the discretion and at the request of the fourth race, or ETs, that we spoke about earlier in the show. This book is the release of the first of 4 books. And by the way, they were written in reverse. I know that sounds kind of weird. But the first one I wrote was The Cosmic Blueprint, which will be the last book that will be released after December 21st, 2012. It's a cosmic blueprint for mankind to reestablish his bearing, his understanding, and his ability to transcend himself into the future age. Because much of the old way of life and much of the old way life was conducted on Earth will have changed. It will be significant change. It'll be far more than an Obama change, you see. It'll be spiritual, it'll be cosmic in nature, and it will affect the entire planet all at the same time. And once again, we have this UFO ET component, because I think that there will be huge segments of the population removed from the planet before these awful, awful, terrible Earth changes and possible terrorist complications emerge. But I do not think that there will be an all-out physical nuclear war. I don't believe it. I don't believe the powers that be, whether it be the Godhead or the ETs or whatever, that they would allow this planet to become destroyed. It's too important in the scheme of things in our sector of the galaxy that this planet remain habitable and hopefully sane.
I hope you're right.
Do either one of you want to generate a question where we're headed or a change? I don't want to oversaturate what we're talking about other than be prepared, be prepared, be prepared.
Okay, Glenn?
Right, yeah, just real quick, the visitors that you were talking about, what was their overall message? I mean, was it one of this is coming, but in the end it'll be a better time afterwards, was your mission to kind of warn people about it, or can you just talk briefly about that?
You just nailed it. I'll talk more about it. You just nailed it. They told me that I would be a writer. No, the first thing they told me was, you'll be a musician, you'll be an author, and you'll be a teacher. And I became the musician, I became the writer, and like the show is a form of teaching. You see? Right. It's informal, but we're still teaching. We're sharing ideas. We're sharing experiences. We're talking about concepts and all kinds of weird things like UFOs and ETs and cosmic time changes and gravitational fields and all that kind of stuff. People go, what the heck are you talking about? But everybody knows what we're talking about. None of this stuff is a mystery. Everybody knows there's UFOs, probably UFOs and ETs, and there's such things as telepathy. There certainly was in Star Trek, so it had to be true, right?
That's right.
All right. So where we're going with all this, the time right now is getting very narrow before major events. Well, there are major events happening. What I'm saying is the real nasty major events. This thing unfolding off the coast of Israel is certainly not a trivial thing. Not at all. But if those two sister volcanoes blow, which story do you think would command the press? Would it be the Israel story, or would it be the two volcanoes?
Yeah, volcanoes.
Of course, the volcanoes. Yeah. Of course. So you see how it works, is you deflect from the target of interest by holding other events hostage. You see? And you know what? It's okay. I'm not sure the public would be ready for it yet. I think they're getting ready for it. See, I think the public, especially in this country, is extremely savvy. I think they're extremely smart. I think they're extremely sophisticated. And I think they're very, very coy. This whole business of tea parties and malcontent and all that, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. That ain't even about to strike a chord, okay? It's a lot deeper than that. People are instinctively scared. They're instinctively wary. They don't trust the government. They don't trust the oceans. They don't trust the sun. They don't trust the pilot. They don't trust nothing and nobody. And I, for one, am glad that they finally come awake like this. This is not the time to go to sleep and just trust whatever happens. It may mean your life or the life of your loved one, or certainly your easier than thou lifestyle, you see?
Yes,
so what do? We talk about it. The only way for us to begin to understand the nature of our position, first of all on this planet, and then in the solar system, and then its relationship to our known sector of the Milky Way galaxy, is for us to start thinking about things. We need to talk about it, we need to discuss it, we need to think it, and we need to make it happen. That is the only way to create reality, other than the power to manifest thought out of mental substance. It's possible, but it's very difficult, and that's another whole show.
All
Now,
right, Dr. Wren, I'd like to take a call. We
yes,
have
yes.
Ross from North Carolina. You are on Late Night in the Midlands.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, I have a question. You were saying something about South Carolina?
Michael, you were mentioning about the fault zone in South Carolina.
Yes, yes, I was.
I think she wants you to tell her about it.
Because I live in North Carolina.
Okay, and did you have a question?
Yeah, what's going to be going on in South Carolina? Because I live in North Carolina.
Okay, Dr. Wren, I think that one would actually go to you.
All right. There was a recent article, ma'am. Very good question. There is a series of major fault zones. There's about 5 of them, and they all run from a northeast to a southwest direction. They cut through North Carolina and South Carolina and Virginia. They're part of the Appalachian Mountains. Then they come on down through the Smokies. These are real, live, potentially damaging fracture fault zones. And they travel completely across the southeastern part of the United States. Now, they're not really discussed. There has not been a lot of recent earthquake activity in these zones, but it's interesting that they're now beginning to release information on these. And this chart, which I have, clearly indicates that these fracture zones go for almost 1,300 miles long in this far arching dip down into the southeast states. So yes, there is potential for earthquake activity in almost every section of the country, including the southeast states, especially the ocean states. Did that answer your question for you?
Is there a way we could get a copy of the chart?
Yes, just go up to the USGS website. That's the official website for the earthquake predicting organization in Golden, Colorado. All right, okay. USGS, and then Google up the North Central fracture zone areas, and you should come up with a beautiful color chart.
Okay. And what about the book you're talking about?
If you'd like to get a copy of the book we've written, my number is 901.
I've got the number. Are they free books, or how much are they, or what do we have to do?
They're retailing for $29.95. What I'm doing is I'm discounting it to $24.95. I'll personally sign it, and I'll pay for the shipping and handling. That saves you another $4.50. So for $24.95 in a money order, I'll work something out with you on the phone. I'll get you a signed book. It's 342 pages, 2,000 references, beautiful color artwork, a very handsome book. There's work areas, pages left blank, so you can do figuring and do problem solving. It's a workbook of sorts. It's a textbook, and it's full of survival tips and archaeological information and government preparedness and all of the good things everything that we've talked about tonight. Ma'am, every single thing we've touched upon is covered in the book.
Because I lived in Fort Lauderdale, Florida before through Hurricane Andrew.
Oh, wasn't that awful?
Actually, I slept right through it. We woke up and there was water, to be honest.
That had to be frightening in itself, was it not?
Oh, no, not really. We just taped up the windows and bought a little extra food and candles and, something to light them with.
Sure,
it was
sure.
All right. I mean, it was 10 years ago, I think.
Sure. Oh, maybe more. Well, it's good to know.
More than that, because my children were little.
Yeah.
Now that I think about that.
Listen, it's good to know that you survived it, and it's good to know that.
For that.
Well, it also sounds like you were prepared for it too.
Mhm. Sure was.
All right. Well, listen, we thank you for calling. We thank you for calling, and I'd appreciate it if you'd pass on that message of people being prepared for the unexpected. We never know when a disaster is going to hit.
Yes, and I do thank you for calling as well. Okay, Dr. Rand, we have about maybe 30 seconds left, so if you want to go ahead and
yes, my experience. Yes, my experience is not unique. There are many other people like me, all doing the same kind of job, trying to get the planet ready for its transition. The book is available in bookstores, or you can get one at 901-336-9660. This is not a time for panic or depression or being afraid or being confused or being panicky. This is a time for self-reflection. Who you are, where am I at, what am I going to do, am I prepared, what's going on with the planet, why is the weather acting bad, why is it all politics going crazy, what's wrong with Washington, what's wrong with this, what's wrong with that, what's wrong with everything. I think it's because we're going through a major planetary set of changes. It's called the end times. So now it's time for self-reflection, get your game together, get prepared, and I think you'll make it through the future. But it's racing at us, Michael, faster than a speeding train. So on that note, I want to thank you so much for having us on again. It was great fun as always.
Okay, yes, it was very fun.
And if you guys want to do a third show later, go ahead and plan it, let me know, and we'll sign on board. How's that?
All right, sounds good to me, Dr. Rand.
Gentlemen, thanks for your help. Thanks for having us on. And once again, we have to understand what the future is, because the future is where we'll spend the rest of our lives. Because they're a physical entity. They're a craft. They call them nuts and bolts. Okay? So they did. My being there further complicated their game plan severely, because it just so happened that my boat that was sinking was drifting across the lake toward their intended destination point, which had been created hours before my boat even got near where it landed. And so what they were doing was their radiation patterns and their gravitational force devices probably would have cooked me or boiled me right in the boat, just passing over me, because these crafts give off radiation fields.
Oh, sure, yeah.
All right, and that's why you can't touch them. You're not supposed to touch them physically. Mm-hmm. It's like the kid who sticks out his tongue in a frozen light pole. What happens?
He sticks to it.
He sticks to it. Right. All right. So it landed. It went about its business of recalibrating. It took about 4 hours for them to repair it, and they were perfectly safe, because they put a larger form of a K-Bach completely over the landed ship, and I have a artistic rendering of that someday I'll put in a book. It looked like a crystal pyramid, and it was huge. It was several hundred feet high. It could have been like a miniature, King Khufu, a great pyramid in Egypt. It just towered over the ship, and it looked to be like plexiglass. All right, how did they get there? All right. What I experienced was being brought aboard the ship at my own free will. I was not abducted, and I was not probed and searched and poked, or any of those things. That's what everybody asked me. Oh my God, what did they do to you? They didn't do anything to me except speak to me and feed me, and I was able to clean up. Believe it or not, they have showers. Well, it's kind of like a shower. It's kind of a misty electronic thing. Mm-hmm. And they had fresh clothes for me. Elon and I were basically like twins in body, because back then I was really, really, really thin. At age 11, I don't know, I might have weighed 115, 118 pounds maybe, I don't know. But Elon was very similar to me, not only stature, he was slightly taller than me, and I was tall for my age. He was 11 and a half.
On Planet X and various other things. So, okay, Dr. Rand, we are back.
Okay.
All right.
Let's kind of pick up the story where we look out across and see this huge rock wall out overlooking the field where the ship would land. They were here trying to map the electrical grid and the power structure and the potential for disaster along the Mississippi Valley. But on their way here, they were struck by this type of electronic laser weaponry that the Russians were testing. By the way, they had lasers back in the 30s. This is not new technology to them.
Okay.
They were working with laser weapons. They actually, did you know, a little deviation here, did you know that Hitler was working on his own UFO program, that they had captured several themselves? I
have heard about it, but I didn't know a whole lot about it.
They had a whole huge top secret UFO base way up in the Bering Straits. It's another story. It's a brilliant story. It was called Pendamundi, and it was a top secret, and they were testing UFOs there. That'll be another night. We'll do that one another night.
Okay.
So what was about to happen was that the ship had to land, because when this laser weapon struck the ship, it disrupted a very sensitive piece of navigation, a device that navigated and also interpreted the atmospheres of each of the planets or the moons or whatever they were visiting. Very sophisticated piece of equipment. It was thrown out of serious alignment because of the electromagnetic effects of this weapon. And so they had to land to recalibrate at the frequency points. There are grid systems that cover the planet. They're called ley lines. And they crisscross the planet like a very intricate web of lines. Like they're almost little grid systems. And if you know where to locate them, and you're able to tap into their immediate proximity, either by drilling or by seismic interference of some sort, what you do is you empower yourself, because this energy is always outflowing. It doesn't take from you, it gives to you, you see. It's a constant source of energy. All you have to do is learn how to tap into it. And that's how many, if not most, of UFOs traverse our atmospheres. They appear to float, they appear to zigzag. It's because they've learned how to navigate these electromagnetic fields that permeate the Earth. It's like a giant grid system. Okay, so they had to land, so they had to create a physical landing zone. Because it was a computer-generated program, but somebody forgot to end it or to stop its movement, whatever. The ship lands, and he starts talking to me again. And even though I knew exactly who he was, I still got startled. And I remember pushing myself back. When he first came on, it was loud in my ears. It was like, oh my God. And I knew it was him. I'm looking down at the ship. It had to be him. So he says, how was our landing? And the only word that I had in my mind was terrifying. And he laughed. He thought that was so funny. So I said to him, I said, why are you laughing? I said, I'm sitting here shaking. He said, oh, he says, we got a lot more surprises than that. And then I suddenly realized, Michael, I'm dealing with a superior intelligence that is not only witty and smart, but he's cunning, and he's very, very hip. You follow me?
Yes, I do.
Which made me feel very, very good. Now, isn't that a positive end to that point? It made me feel extremely good, because this did not sound like the voice or the pattern or the mind of some bad creature from outer space that was going to do me harm, you see?
Mm-hmm.
So I basically said to him, I said, here I am, and there you are. I said, now what? And he says, very clearly, he's just like talking to you, Michael, just like I'm talking to you right now. He says, well, my father would like you to come aboard and be our guest. And I immediately hesitated because do you remember seeing the original black and white version of the original Thing?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do.
You remember that scene when they were trying to open the freezer door and it reaches out and it grabs one of the scientists?
Yeah.
That's what flashed through my mind when he said, you know, my father would like to invite you to dinner. Now, wasn't that sick for an 11-year-old? I was writing that segment for my book, and I couldn't help. When I read it, I thought to myself how absurd everything was, but it all happened just that way, so I wrote about it, right? So he picks that up, right? As he reads my mind, there's nothing that I could think about that he wasn't already perceiving and understanding, okay? So he stops, because I don't see him now. I'm empathizing all this from his voice to me. He stops in his tracks a little bit. So he says, "No, come on." He says, "Not me, not us." And I immediately understood. Years old, I was 11, but he was like 30 years smarter. You see?
Yes, sir.
It wasn't. We were both the same age, but his intelligence and his maturity was like at age 30 for me. Different cultures, that's all. It doesn't mean that I'm slow or I didn't make it. It just means he's ahead of me. That's how their structure, that's how their genetics, that's how their humanoid systems work, okay? And anyway, what they look like? Well, kind of like Japanese Orientals. Very, very, very similar. Slight of body. Very, very interesting. Their uniforms were all the same, except for little bars, and it reminded me of a barcode. You know, like when you buy something, you flash the barcode.
Yes.
They had like little barcode things. I mean, that's the best I can do. And they were all different. No two were alike. And I think that was their identification. That was their badges. That was their clearance things. And I think all they had to do was lean toward this laser like, and he looks at it and he goes, "Okay, so you're Amy Doolittle and you're supposed to be a cook down on the 4th deck." Okay, you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
But their facial features were very, very similar. You could tell a male from a female, no problem, but it was hard to tell age. I couldn't distinguish age. They all kind of looked the same age to me, except the young ones. The young ones were more distinctive, and there were a couple of, I think they were like cadets, and the best I can do, okay? Because I only spoke to no more than about 4 or 5 of them. What happened was that they sent this device out, and they rescued me and brought me to the shore, and then once I climbed up the sand dune, I was directed to go to across the far end of the field, and that there would be a little cave that had been prepared for me. He called it a shelter. Actually, what it was a pretty crude but very sophisticated cave. They dug out this shelf, just like a huge shelf, and it was like not quite 6 feet long, but it was about 3 foot deep, and it was kind of curved, and then the top of it was just like a cliff. I mean, it had a roof to it, maybe 5 feet from the surface, big enough for me to climb into with my boat cushions and lay out. And strangely enough, this is weird, Michael.
Yeah.
When I got in it, it was nice and warm and comfy. And when I got out of it, I could feel the night. How about that? And it was partially illuminated. Now I asked him later on. I said, what was that little shelter thing you talk about? He said, well, he says, I've seen a couple of your westerns, and he says, I thought it would be a nice touch to give you something that felt like home on the range. Do you know how intelligent that statement was? How contrived it was? And so he created this beautiful little hollow for me to go into that gave me warmth and shelter and safety, because the ship landed right out in front of me about 30 minutes later, you see?
Mm-hmm.
I witnessed the entire landing of the craft. It came in low. It was It was just like a Spielberg movie. So Stephen, if you're listening, the rights are available, okay? How's that? And I'm not being too bold or rash, am I?
No.
All right. I'm serious. The rights are available. So this cave sits about 4.5 feet up from the bottom of what was this loose rocky terrain that led out to this field of grass. By the way, the field of grass never stopped waving all through this time that I was there. It was like it was pre-programmed to wave. Even when the ship was landed, it kept waving. It was like a program, what I thought was. It was like a computer program that stuck, you know. First you have the waving grass and then you have something else. So that's how I perceived it. I thought it was strange, and I asked him about it. I said, why is it that once the ship landed and everything, that, you know, when the ship landed, the grass should have been blown all over the place? He said, well, he said, it's not really grass. He said, it's the illusion of grass. He says, but it does have a physical element to it, and you can see it.
Like the holodeck on
yes.
Star Trek, yes.
Yes, because when I walked through that field of holographic grass, not only did I got wet, I got a couple of small cuts on my hands from the grass. It was tall grass, but it was also like wheat from my memory of being in the combine when I was a kid on that farm, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized, oh yeah, this is a heck of a lot more complicated than I ever thought it would be. And then imagine my surprise years later when I see all this stuff materialize in Star Trek. Do you know how gratified I was that I wasn't, and that I hadn't imagined all this stuff? What a sigh of relief it was, right? By the way, a quick aside to that, I was close friends with Gene Roddenberry. I'll tell you more about that maybe in the later part of the segment. So I even got to meet him and be friends with him and everything. Okay, back to the story. So this thing lands, and the grass was weird. What it